Okay, so let's talk about TikTok. How on earth did an app that was this close to getting banned in the US manage to pull off one of the most amazing corporate escape acts we've seen in a long, long time?
You know, back in early 2026, it really felt like the clock was about to strike midnight for TikTok in the US. I mean, a full-on nationwide ban was looming, and it looked like it was game over. But then, this last-minute deal came through that saved it. And on the surface, it looked pretty straightforward. But let me tell you, behind the scenes, it was this insane game of high-stakes corporate and geopolitical chess.
And what was at the heart of this whole storm? This number right here, 200 million. That's how many American users were at risk. But thanks to this brand new company, the TikTok USDS joint venture, every single one of them gets to keep on scrolling, creating, and connecting.
All right, so to get the green light, this new venture had to make some huge promises. First off, they said, look, all US user data, it's going to be secured right here in Oracle's US cloud. And that super powerful recommendation algorithm, yep, that's getting retrained and locked down here in the States too. Plus, Oracle will be continuously reviewing the source code itself. And maybe most importantly, all the content moderation decisions, yep, those will be made on American soil. I mean, on paper, it really looked like an ironclad firewall. But look, a deal like this doesn't just materialize out of thin air, right? It was actually the final move in this incredibly dramatic, high-stakes battle that went from the halls of Congress all the way to the Supreme Court.
And this timeline, wow, it really shows you just how much pressure ByteDance was under. So April 2024, Congress passes that now famous divest or ban law. Of course, TikTok fought back, they took it to court, but their challenges got shot down one after another. And then the hammer really fell. January 17, 2025, the Supreme Court says the law is constitutional. That's it. The clock was officially ticking. It forced ByteDance to the negotiating table, and that's what led to this very deal just over a year later.
Okay, now this is where it starts to get really interesting. We're going to start peeling back the layers of this thing. And if you really want to understand what happened here, you just have to follow the money.
So when you first look at it, the ownership structure seems perfect. It totally complies with US law. ByteDance, TikTok's parent company in China, holds just 19.9%, safely under that 20% line in the sand. The majority? It's American-owned. You've got heavy hitters like Silver Lake and Oracle, each grabbing a 15% stake. So problem solved, right? Case closed?
Well, not so fast. Because here's the kicker. There is this huge disconnect between who owns the company and who gets the profits. See, even though they only have a minority stake, ByteDance brilliantly negotiated a deal where they get roughly 50% of all the profits from the US. That just completely changes the financial reality of the whole thing, and honestly, it might just set a new precedent for how global companies deal with these kinds of national security showdowns.
And hey, you don't even have to take my word for it. An investor inside ByteDance summed it up perfectly. They literally called it a perfect deal, where, yeah, control belongs to US capital, but the majority of the profit flows right back to ByteDance. Wow. But the complexity doesn't stop with the money. No. It's also baked right into the corporate structure itself. It gets even more tangled.
So the official story we're told is that this new U.S. joint venture creates a total operational firewall, to protect American users. But that begs the question, is everything really under U.S. control?
And this table, this just illustrates the split perfectly. It turns out there isn't just one TikTok company in the US, there are two. You've got the majority US-owned joint venture, and it handles all the sensitive stuff, user data, the algorithm, content moderation. But then there's this completely separate company called TT Commerce and Global Services. And guess who owns that one? It's fully owned by ByteDance. And what does it manage? Oh, just the big money makers, e-commerce, advertising, and marketing. Unbelievable.
So you're probably asking, why? Why create this incredibly complicated maze, both financially and corporately? Well, at the end of the day, this wasn't just a business deal. It was a political solution. It was a deal of convenience. For Washington, it was all about looking tough on China and securing American data. For Beijing, it was about not having to face the humiliation of a forced sale of one of their tech champions. So this structure, it was this clever middle ground that let both sides claim a public victory, no matter what was really going on underneath.
So from the US side, President Trump basically framed it as this huge, decisive win. He came out and said that TikTok would now be owned by, quote, a group of great American patriots and investors, and that he was so happy to have helped in saving the app. I mean, it was a total victory lap.
Beijing, on the other hand,
Their reaction was way more measured, much more cautious. China's Ministry of Commerce just put out this statement saying it hopes companies can reach resolutions that both comply with Chinese laws and reflect a balanced consideration of interests. You can just feel the careful wording there, right? It really highlights the delicate dance that was happening.
Okay, so after all this intricate maneuvering, we have to come back to the original question. Does this deal actually solve the problem that started this whole thing in the first place, that potential threat to U.S. national security? And it seems the public is really divided on that.
And yeah, a lot of people are still deeply skeptical. Just listen to some of the chatter out there. One person says, as long as a Chinese company has a controlling interest, there is no possible security. Another one has a more cynical take, suggesting the U.S. government only tolerates this because the new company can be controlled with FISA court orders. And then you have people who just dismiss the whole thing as, quote, theater that needs to be called out. So yeah, the core debate here, it is clearly far from over.
So, what are we supposed to make of all this? Is this TikTok deal some kind of brilliant new blueprint for how global tech companies are going to navigate our fractured world? Or is it just a masterclass in creative accounting and corporate shenanigans that really just kicks the can down the road? I guess that remains the billion-dollar question, doesn't it?